we'll be focusing on how to hopefully avoid having a business dispute. If you do find yourself in a situation where you're needing to challenge another party that you're dealing with commercially, or indeed you're on the receiving end of that, how to best to deal with that. And I'll also step you through some of the assistance at the Small Business Commission and advice that we can provide to help you if none of those things are successful. The Commission has been going for over 21 years, so we have a lot of lived experience of being the circuit breaker in the middle for business disputes. We have seen everything you can imagine, every kind of behaviour that you can possibly imagine. Sadly. And we've also, of course, were knee deep in assisting particularly tenants, commercial tenants and their landlords navigate the really difficult years that were COVID and inability of some businesses to operate or operate fully as well too. So there's very little that we haven't seen or heard. We still get dazzled by perspectives of human behaviour, but we bring to the webinar today a lot of lived experience in seeing where things have gone wrong. We also see where we can see disputes get resolved well or quickly, or with our intervention resolved in a way that they might not otherwise have been able to be resolved. So this is the point of today, sharing that expertise with you, because we also see where businesses are in dispute, where sometimes they can continue to make that situation harder for themselves as well. So I don't say that with obviously any sense of judgment. It's really hard running a small business. It's one of the hardest things you can do. No one goes into small business because they want an easy life. They go into small business because you're passionate about what your skill set is or what you can offer the market, or indeed the life that you want to provide for yourself. If you don't want to have report to a boss, or you want to create something for yourself and your family as well. So it's impossible to extricate human nature and personalities from that as well, which is why I think so many people get great value out of the Commission, because we are independent and we are that often that circuit breaker in the middle. So in terms of the kind of disputes that we deal with, so the last financial year we had around 18,000 applications, and many, many more thousands of people contacted us for assistance and advice through our website and also through our phone service as well. We've got a team of experienced dispute resolution officers who, when something is lodged with us as a formal dispute, we can have resolved almost around 35% of disputes really quickly and easily. Of those that need to go on to a formal mediation, 75% of those were successfully resolved at mediation. So if there's one thing you take away from the session today, it's that if you come to us with a dispute, the odds are very good that you'll walk away with that dispute resolved. So please just put this in the back of your mind, either for yourself, those you deal with, or if you're advising small businesses, to not forget that we're here to help as well too. So there's a range of different pieces of legislation, 5 in fact, that we administer from a dispute resolution, and alternative dispute resolution is the lingo that, in the legal terminology that gets used, that sometimes you might see get broken down to ADR. What that effectively means is dispute resolution that is designed to stop anyone going to court for a whole range of reasons, which I'll talk through. So the most common disputes we deal with are unpaid money, particularly at the moment. This didn't used to be so much of a feature of our work, probably until COVID. We'd help out from time to time, and effectively it means one business hasn't been paid by another business. Sometimes a small business might be having problems with a government department or a local council with getting paid on time. And I really do encourage you, if you do end up in that situation, which I hope you don't, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us, because in Victoria, state government departments and a number of their agencies are required to pay small businesses under $3 million in terms of the contract in 10 business days. And if they don't do that, they're meant to pay you penalty interest as well. So we can help. We can help with that. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, all tiers of government, if you're dealing with the Commonwealth government, state government, local government, public entities, and they're dragging their heels with paying you when they should, give us a call or lodge a dispute with us and we'll be able to help you. The bulk of what we deal with unpaid money is other businesses owing money to other businesses. Contractual rights, so that could be something. So, for example, franchisee who might believe that they're getting treated unfairly in terms of the franchise agreement, or the franchise agreement is not being honoured as well. It could be that in line with undelivered goods or services, that you've paid a business to do something or provide something to you and they either haven't, they've provided you with the wrong thing, or it's just not up to standard. We've seen instances where, for example, businesses like restaurant or cafe have taken bookings and got staff rostered on the basis of obviously that their perishable food will get delivered as it's meant to, and then they're left high and dry. So we can help with those disputes as well. And contractual rights pretty much cover everything. There's only two things that really outside our jurisdiction. One is if you're having any disputes with your employees, that employment stuff. And the other one is with like a retail consumer. So if you're running a business and you're selling stuff to another human, so to speak, that's not a business. Sole traders, yes, but not a business. So if you're running a shop, for example, the businesses that are supplying you with your stock, or if you're using a cleaning company to do your cleaning, that's all within our jurisdiction. But if I just wandered into your shop, I would be perfect, so there'd be no dispute, obviously. But if I just wandered in as a normal consumer person to buy something and there was an issue about what I bought, that's not covered with our jurisdiction. That gets covered under consumer law, as I'm sure that you would know. Goods or services I've covered off as well. So that's sort of the kind of the high level of what we deal with. And of course, a huge part of what we do is retail leasing disputes, which effectively is a version of contractual disputes. So probably of all the disputes we get, around 40 to 50% at the moment would relate to disputes between landlords and their tenants in a retail leasing space. Part of the reason is there's high levels of conflict in that space, and there's a lot riding on it for both parties, and also the legislation, the Retail Leases Act, in many instances, in fact, in most instances, requires the parties to come to us to try and seek resolution before going on to VCAT or court. So tips to avoid disputes, and we come at this again from lived experience. I was also a commercial litigator in a previous life many moons ago, and no one wins going to court or a tribunal. Even if you win, you still lose. You never get, even if you win on every single point and you get a costs order, you will still be out of pocket. It is impossible. It's just the frameworks are not set up, and litigation is not set up that you'll be put back exactly in the position that you would have been otherwise. It's just not the reality, irrespective of whether that should be. I think always having that frame in mind around when you're going into relationships, the importance of knowing who you're transacting with. So ideally, and sometimes you do as a small business, you don't necessarily have this degree of choice. Ideally, what we talk about is, particularly if you're going into a longer term contract or one that's involving, larger sums of money or bigger impact on your business if it all goes pear-shaped, is trying to be partnering with, in a commercial context, with people who you think kind of share your values from a business perspective. So people who have integrity, people who will do what they say they do, people who will, if they run into an issue, if there's delays or whatever, or there's a problem with what they've promised to be able to do for you, that they'll let you know. And there are things that you can do to actually dig around on that. And my advice to all of you would be the greater the dollar value and or the impact on your business, if something goes wrong with this interaction that you're having, the more digging that you should do. And there is no shortage of ways in which you can actually have a poke around. So obviously the internet is a wonderful thing. It's not hard to get reviews from customers and sometimes other businesses in a whole range of different ways online. And I can tell you from our perspective that businesses that have high levels of complaints from their customers, in terms of those human customers I'm talking about, sure as eggs, they're not treating the businesses they deal with well either at all. There's also really good information available in publicly available credit registers as well. The ATO now discloses if you're a business that owes the ATO over the taxpayer, effectively owes the taxpayer via the ATO over $100,000, and you're not in a payment plan with them and you're not engaging with the ATO in how that's going to be resolved, the ATO discloses that now. Businesses that go belly up, businesses that fail invariably leave a large trail of debt to other businesses. Usually it's the ATO is often the largest creditor that's left owing the most amount of money. Then it can sometimes obviously be banks and or landlords as well. But in every instance where I've seen business failure of business A, business B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, are owed money by that business as well. So doing your due diligence to find out, are there indicators that this business might be in trouble or this business might be having cash flow problems? The one thing I would say too, if you do set up commercial terms with someone that you're doing business with and you've agreed to all that at the outset, and then at some point in time, they're pressuring you to change that. That could be maybe prepay things in advance. That could be maybe you've planned to pay in installments and they're trying to actually get that brought forward. Those are red flags. It doesn't always mean that something's bad, but those kind of things can be an indicator that the business is suffering cash flow challenges or liquidity issues. So be really, really careful with those sorts of things and go into those decisions with a really clear risk-based mindset from your risk perspective as well. There's also personal property register, which will make sure, I haven't got linked in the slides, but we'll make sure we send these links through to you as well too. If you're buying an asset for someone, you want to make sure they own it or they've got the legal title to that asset. If you're, for example, providing an asset to someone else, you want to make sure you're protected as well. So there's a personal property register that is administered by AFSA, and a Commonwealth government agency. We'll send you the links to that. The biggest users of those, really big companies and the banks, unsurprisingly, they're doing a great job of protecting their risk and knowing what they're going into and making sure that they're protected to get their money back, and it is available for small businesses, and it's for a really nominal cost. So really a shout out to the register to check for that. Other things to be aware of too is, as a small business, you're a consumer too. So in a lot of instances, you're actually protected by consumer law as well. Hasn't always been the case. Consumer law originally was set up for, the sad stories to do with the humans. But there's been growing recognition over the years of businesses, particularly small businesses, that can be taken advantage of from a consumer perspective too, because you're buying stuff from other businesses as well. We take a really dim view of anti-competitive conduct, which we see related to small businesses getting taken advantage of by other businesses in the consumer space. And indeed, it was a few years ago, we were picking up a pattern in our disputes. We were receiving a number of separate disputes from small businesses that had engaged with another business and provided them with money, paid this other business to effectively do stuff for them. And this business wasn't doing anything for any business. So we picked that up because we looked at that and we said, okay, this isn't a miscommunication issue. This isn't or whatever. This is actually a pattern of a business. The business model is taking money from other businesses, and not delivering. That's actually the business model. So we prepared a brief of evidence and referred it off to Consumer Affairs Victoria here in Victoria, unsurprisingly. And indeed, that business and the individual who ran that business ended up getting criminally prosecuted in the Magistrates Court of Victoria and having criminal convictions and penalties imposed as well. So we're here for you with that stuff as well. So if you do hear bad stories or you've been a victim of some of that consumer, not having your consumer rights protected, don't forget Consumer Affairs Victoria is there for you as well. And we can also be a front door to get access to consumer affairs as well too. Adopting e-invoicing systems. So that's all set up to be, try and do business with someone who you think's going to be basically a good person, at least with respect to business, and is going to treat you fairly. And if there are issues, you'll be able to sort them out sensibly. If you can avoid contracting with rat bags from day one, that will set you up in a much better spot. often they look exactly like the rest of us. So you can't, don't feel bad or don't feel ashamed if you've been caught out dealing with another business that's done the wrong thing by you, or it's turned out to be dodgy. Some of the smartest, richest people in this country would get tricked by some of these people as well too. So there's no embarrassment or shame in putting your hand up at any point in time for help. E-invoicing, I am so passionate about e-invoicing. A terrible name. It's a shocking name. It's such a government name for it. Basically, it means using your natural business systems, the digital ones, like could be Xero, MyUp, QuickBooks, what have you, using that to basically transact your invoicing with another business. So it all happens system to system. There is a great service that's provided in Victoria from the Commonwealth Government, which actually provides security for that chain, if you like, the tech. I won't pretend to explain the tech behind it, but the fancy tech that sits behind this system talking to this system, which means you can send an invoice via this system pathway to this system, another business, and paid, and vice versa. So it does a huge amount to help you run your business really efficiently and effectively. It does a huge amount to cut out scams, people jumping into your inbox and emailing your clients and changing the VSB numbers, all that kind of stuff. The ATO is actually the one who is leading this work in Australia on behalf of the Commonwealth Government. So we'll make sure you've got the links to the great e-invoicing. Don't be freaked out that it's the ATO. They have no access to that information that you have within there. They're not peeking inside your shoebox. They're just the ones who had the technical expertise and also the IT chops up from single touch payroll to be able to do this, build this part. And my understanding is most of all the commercially available digital bookkeeping and payroll systems and management of all of those ones, like the names I mentioned, and there will be others, have this enabled already. It's just a matter of going into your profile and ticking a box basically to enable it. So really encourage that. It makes it as easy as possible for the other party to pay you, which gets to how you'd avoid the dispute in the first place. Getting written agreements on quotes so there's no misunderstanding, or if there is, that gets flushed out really early before stuff's done is really important. For the big ticket items, getting legal advice on contracts. If you're in a space where you need written agreements with a lot of your customers, it's probably well worth the money to get a lawyer to draft up a really basic template. They don't need to be complicated. They don't need to be written in some kind of crazy legal language. It just needs to set out what are you going to do, when, for who, and for how much. I'd really encourage, if you do have written terms of agreements, to chuck in a dispute resolution clause in there as well, where both parties are agreeing to, before boxing off to lawyers, that you'll actually, if we have a dispute, this is what we'll do about it. It's much easier to agree to that before you actually are in dispute. That's something that I would really encourage. And a number of commercial entities I know actually put in, we all agree that if we have a problem, we'll go to the Small Business Commission, which has the advantage of it's mostly free as well. And of course, document any concerns that you have and communicate them promptly. So that allows a business the time and the immediacy to be able to address problems, because running a business, sometimes stuff goes wrong, as you know. And even with the best of intent, you'll let customers down, or there'll be some defective work. That's just the reality of the world. But communicating really quickly to whoever you're contracting with, or you've received something from, hey, this isn't right, or you haven't done it in the time frame. The sooner you do that, the more likely it is to be able to be constructively resolved. Okay, so now you've done all that amazing stuff, and despite that, you still unfortunately find yourself in a dispute, perhaps because the other party hasn't watched this webinar. So some advice for you that's really practical is, and I put my old commercial litigator hat on this, and what I learned through there about what not to do is, if you're in a dispute, if you've got an issue and it's gotten to the point where it's really actually kind of become a dispute, if it hasn't resolved promptly, rarely will it make commercial sense to fully pursue what's right. And I'm really careful not to give anyone legal advice here, because that's not what my job is currently, and also everyone's situations are so different. So if you're in a situation where you're having to make these big decisions, it can be a great idea to get legal advice. And the Law Institute has a great referral service, which you can get free, a free first call, basically, with a lawyer just to kick the tires about, is it worth getting advice on in a more fulsome way. Changing your mindset from what you feel is right to the question moving to how is best I can resolve this dispute that I'm now grappling with, rather than fully pursuing your rights. It needs to be a commercial decision. When we hear people talk about it's the principle of it, 100% of time, the pathways that are chosen because it's the principle end in tears, and lots more money spent than if other alternatives had been able to be reached earlier in the piece as well. So if you do end up in dispute, get all the relevant information together so that you're really clear. Go back over your emails or your notes, go back over the documents, invoices, run your eye over things, and just remind yourself, okay, what did we agree to? What were the time frames? What's gone wrong? If you've got photos, if you've, as I said, emails, or if you've got examples of defective work or things you haven't, you've clearly been invoiced and not paid, figure out what's the most relevant piece of the puzzle, and think about the outcome you want. And that goes to the point of focusing on resolution of the dispute opposed to enforcing 100% of your rights. Now, of course, if someone owes you money, the first tilt you have at that is 100% of what you're entitled to. Absolutely. Go hard for that. And if you've paid people money or partially paid them money to come in and do some work for you and it's rubbish, absolutely, in the first instance, push that gets fully fixed. This is not a raise the white flag immediately. But if you've given that a red hot go and you're continuing to have a crack at it and it's still not resolving it, and it's taking up your time and emotion and your stress, and you're focusing on that, it's the time to fix to what's my least worst option to get out of this? What's my, best scenario that I can hopefully salvage from the fact that I am in dispute, noting that perfection is very unlikely at this point. So some of the tips that I would have for you as well is in terms of course, I just skipped ahead there. Set yourself up to communicate clearly. Practice, practice, practice. So no one likes having disputes with people. No one likes feeling like you're doing it super professionally and calmly, confronting other people. And as an Australian culture, it's not embedded into our natural way of doing business in this country either. So there's no shame at all in practice, practice, practice. How is it going to come out of your mouth? If you feel more comfortable, write it down as a script. If that makes you feel more confident, practice it though. And if you're on the phone, for example, then don't read it out like you're reading a script. Practice it so you can speak to it naturally. But if you're worried about you're going to stumble over your words or you're going to get bamboozled by the other party, have a script. I've done that before and it works a charm. Have dot points you want to cover as well. That can be really helpful, and check them off. But listen, be really actively listening and listen to what's being said, not said, as well as the words that the other party's saying. So if you can hear the emotion dialing up, okay, do I need to back off a little bit now and come at this in a different way? Or you know what, do we need to call time on this phone call because it's all going pear-shaped, and let's come back and have this conversation another time. Pick the right time and place for yourself and the other party. So one thing we do when we're skilling up the individual businesses we're working with on this, like if you're a tradie, for example, and you're going between sites and you're rushing to get to another job and it's in the middle of traffic or whatever, that is not the time to be jumping on the phone to have a really difficult conversation with another business about what they should have done for you or what they should have paid you. You need to be in the right space physically, so that you can be clear-minded about it. The basic stuff too, that you're in the right headspace. So if you've just had a really terrible day, you've just finished having an argument with someone, that is not the time to pick up the phone and have this call. Even stuff like making sure you're watered, fed, all this kind of stuff. After 21 years, that might seem really low level, but I tell you what, it is some of the magic sauce that can get disputes resolved. And the absence of it can become like petrol on a dispute as well. If you're tired, you're cranky, you're hangry, whatever, you're in a rush and you're pressured, you'll be a lot harder for you to be able to frame your ask constructively. And you're going to be more vulnerable to getting more upset with the other party says something that you find upsetting. So stand in the shoes of the other party is a really important part of as well. Try and think in advance, why are they doing this? So if you just park for a moment that, let's assume the other business is not just evil. Let's assume that the business is actually a decent person and they're doing their best to run their business. Why are they not fixing it? Or why haven't they delivered it? Or why aren't they paying me? It doesn't mean you give up your rights, but you just try and stand in their shoes a bit and then think about ways to solve it. And also really actively listening. Maybe they're having cash flow problems and they can't pay you because someone hasn't paid them. That doesn't make it right for you, of course, that you have to endure that. But maybe, for example, can you give me half? Or can we do a payment plan? Or when are you due? And be firm on dates. So when are you expecting that money to finally come in? Okay, great. So then you're going to pay me XYZ on that date. Keep notes in writing. It's good to email stuff to confirm, hey, just as we discussed, I understand you're going to be paying me by the end of the week. Thank you so much, for example. Or you're coming around next week to look at the work to see if it needs to be fixed up. Move to a formal letter if required. My advice usually is do that when you're getting kind of to the end of the spectrum, because going across with letters of demand and formal letters can sometimes, if you go too early, it can actually minimise the chance of you being able to resolve that dispute without lawyers at 100 paces. So, but don't shy away from doing it if you need to. And there's great templates available which we can share with you as well about how you can construct, the nice email that asks, can I get paid? The one that assumes that maybe they've forgotten. But then the follow-up of that, the follow-up right through to a bit of a crispier letter and email, right through to a letter of demand, pay up or otherwise I'm going to take you to court. And of course, where to seek assistance. So this all sounds great in theory. It's not always going to work for a whole range of different ways. So, as I said, court and VCAT are expensive, time-consuming and heartbreaking. If you've got no other choice, they can be really important avenues for you. But in generally running a business, they are to be avoided at all costs. So the Small Business Commission here is here to help. We've got our dispute resolution officers, as I mentioned, who try and resolve it without even any mediation. So that happens through emails and phone calls, talking to both sides, and hopefully, if it needs to be an ongoing relationship, being able to repair that so you can continue to do business with this other business if you want to. And then if that's not successful, we've got an expert team of mediators who are absolutely brilliant, whose job and special, skill set is actually being able to resolve disputes that seem almost impossible to resolve. And the Small Business Commission subsidises your access to that. So if we decide that we think that's warranted in your situation, each party gets asked to pay $300 to cover that cost, to go towards that cost. If you were using our mediators just privately, not via the commission, you'd be looking at about $5,000 as opposed to the $300. And they are the top of their field. They are themselves small business owners. They deal a whole range of different commercial disputes. So they understand your world, they understand your pressure points, and they can be really creative in getting you to think about what might be a really interesting solution to this problem, which might not be apparent to you. So in terms of where you can find us, because I'm conscious of the time and I know I said we would have time for questions, I'm happy to hang back and answer questions, but feel free, I know time is precious. If you need to jump off, feel free to jump off. And as I said, this will be recorded. So if we do get questions and you want to dial in and hear them, you'll have the chance to watch the recording afterwards. So you've got our website there. There's a ton of information available there about almost every topic under the sun. That's our email address for our inquiries, and that 1-800 number is of course free for you to access, where you can call up, talk to a real human being. The wait time's only a few minutes, it's not that long, and you can get great advice and tips on what to do if we can help, and if not, if we can't, get a referral onto someone who can. Just a quick shout out also to the business.vic.gov.au website, which has got great information about everything to do with running a business, including setting a business up, growing a business, different templates, how to deal with some of these issues around getting paid on time and like. So without further ado, I will stop presenting, and noting that now I'll stop sharing. Now I know I've gone over time, so I won't be offended as you drop off, but I'm really happy to answer any questions. And Nick, I might hand over to you to call out any questions that anyone's popped through.
Certainly. We've had one question from Angelo. It was with regards to the types of disputes that can be raised with the VSBC. Angelo asked with regards to telco complaints, if they can be raised with the VSBC or if they're better directed to the telecommunications industry ombudsman.
Great question. So we're not precluded from dealing with disputes with the big telco companies. The TIO is set up specifically exactly for that. So generally speaking, my advice would be I would give the TIO a go first. If for whatever reason that's not successful, we're still here to help. But their process is obviously set up directly to deal with, and they have agreed processes and systems in place with the large telecommunication companies. But we're not precluded from it. So, if you're not getting any joy with TIO, feel free to pop one in with us. We do have a bit of a challenge at the moment in terms of wait times for our services. So, because there is such a high demand for our service, which on the one hand is great that people know about us and feel that they can reach out. The challenge is obviously in terms of from a resourcing perspective responding to that. So there is a bit of a wait time for us to be able to pick up a dispute and act on it. At the moment, it's around 15 weeks, unfortunately, and we're continuing to work to try and to bring that down within our a constrained resourcing environment. Aside, I know it's not telco companies, but digital platforms is something that we deal a lot with as well too. So there are other avenues to go through, but we get great results. We've had businesses who've been banging their head against a brick wall against unnamed photo sharing platform Instagram that 6 months they've been locked out of their Instagram account. That's their business. That's how they get their customers. And when we've picked it up, we've been able to get their account reinstated in less than a day. So feel free, particularly in that digital, because more and more businesses are operating using the digital platforms as a mechanism for connecting with their customers and transacting. If you do have any issues with any of the digital platforms, please don't hesitate to reach out.